Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone are fine. Okay, today we are going to discuss about acute appendicitis. So, what is this appendix and acute appendicitis? Coming to the introduction about the appendix organ. Previously, it is known as like it's a vestigial organ in our body. At present, the concept is different, that it's not a vestigial organ. It has the role in the immunity. Coming to the surgical point of view, why it is important for a surgeon? Surgical importance is that it has the prosperity for inflammation, that is the chances for inflammation which causes acute appendicitis. What is the most common cause of acute abdomen in the young adults is acute appendicitis. So the most important and most common cause of acute abdomen in young adults is acute appendicitis. Coming to the anatomy of appendix, as you all know that appendix is situated at the base of the cecum. See, this is the cecum and this is the appendix. This is the ileum, terminal ileum part. Appendix is present at the base where the three tinea coli they meet at the confluence of the three tinea coli of the cecum. And the mesoappendix, it arises from the lower surface of mesentery of terminal ileum. See, this is the mesentery of terminal ileum. From here, the mesoappendix arises. This is the mesoappendix. Mesoappendix contains the appendicular arteries. Now, what is the blood supply for the appendix? The blood supply is the appendicular artery, which is the branch of ileocholic artery. In turn, ileocholic artery is a branch of superior mesenteric artery. Appendicular artery is an end artery. So, its lymphatic drainage is to the ileocecal lymph nodes. And one word about the artery of Seshachalam. This is also known as accessory appendicular artery. This is an important one. Artery of Seshachalam, also known as accessory appendicular artery. See, superior mesenteric artery gives ileocholic artery. Ileocholic artery is again divided into anterior cecal artery and posterior cecal artery. This posterior cecal artery gives the appendicular artery. Sometimes this posterior cecal artery also gives accessory appendicular artery, which is known as artery of Seshachalam. Now, what are the different positions of the appendix? You all know what is the most common position of appendix, that is retrocecal. It is present in about 74% of the people population. The position of appendix is retrocecal, that is behind the cecum. See, this is the cecum. If the appendix is present behind the cecum, retro, that is behind the cecum, that is retrocecal, and this is the most common position of the appendix. Next comes the pelvic appendix, 21%. If the appendix is present in the pelvis. One point you have to understand is that the base of the appendix is constant in all these positions, like retrocecal position, pelvic position, or paracecal, that is side of cecum, subcecal, below the cecum, pre-ileal, in front of ileal, post-ileal, behind the ileum. In all these positions, the base of the appendix is constant. See, this is the base which is attached or which is fixed to the cecal base. That is, the base of the appendix is always constant. It is the tip position. It varies, and the anatomical positions depends upon the position of tip. If the tip of the appendix is present behind the cecum, then it is retrocecal. If it is present below the cecum, then it is subcecal. If the tip is present in the pelvis, then it is pelvic appendix. If it is present behind the ileum, then it is post-ileal. If it is present in front of the ileum, that is pre-ileal. So, coming to the position of the appendix, there are different types of positions for the appendix. Of all these positions, the base is constant. It is the tip that varies, and the most common position is the retrocecal. Now, acute appendicitis. The incidence of acute appendicitis is relatively rare in infants. You can't see appendicitis cases in case of infants. It's relatively rare. The trend is increasing in childhood and early adult life. So the peak incidence you can find in teens and early 20s. After middle age, that is after early 20s, the risk of developing appendicitis is quite small. Okay. So acute appendicitis, it is peak incidence you will see in teens and early 20s. And after the middle age, the risk of developing appendicitis will be quite small. Now tell me how the incidence is among males and females. The incidence of appendicitis is equal among males and females before puberty. If you see the incidence before puberty, males and females, the incidence is same. But if you see after puberty, that is in case of teenagers and young adults, the male and female ratio, you will see there is an increased ratio or increased incidence in case of males, that is 3:2 at the age of 25. After that, there will be again decline. Again, the ratio will be same. So the incidence between males and females before puberty is same. In the age of teenage and young adults, males will be more prone to appendicitis. After that, again, the incidence will be declining. Now, what is the etiology of appendicitis? See, there is no uniforming hypothesis like this is the cause for appendicitis. Mostly you will see in your clinical practice. Once you tell the patient that you are suffering from acute abdomen or 24-hour pain or acute appendicitis, then they will ask, what is the problem? What is the reason for this appendicitis? There is as such no hypothesis. There's no clear-cut hypothesis that this is the cause for appendicitis. But there are many theories. Like one of the theories like decrease dietary fiber. If your food intake of food contains less amount of fiber and increased consumption of refined carbohydrates, there is increased amount of consumption of refined carbohydrates, then in those population there is relatively high chances of getting appendicitis. And the similar theory holds good for diverticulitis, which is common in the large intestine. Okay. So coming to the etiology of acute appendicitis, there is no uniforming hypothesis. There are relative theories like decreased dietary fiber, if the amount of fiber in your diet is less, or increased consumption of refined carbohydrates. This may contribute for developing acute appendicitis. And you can also say one of the other relative theories like infection. In case of acute appendicitis, it is clearly associated with bacterial proliferations. There is no doubt that acute appendicitis is associated with bacterial proliferation within the appendix. But it's not that only one organism, single organism is not responsible. A mixed growth of aerobic and anaerobic organisms is usual. This aerobic and anaerobics mostly like bacteroids and E. coli. This combination is responsible for this bacterial proliferation within the appendix. Now, what is the reason for causing this bacterial proliferation in the appendix is controversial. We don't know what is the initiating event for this bacterial proliferation. So, acute appendicitis is associated with bacterial proliferation. It's not the single microorganisms. It is a mixed growth of aerobic and anaerobic organisms that are responsible. Now, the other theory is obstructive theory, that is obstruction. What causes the obstruction to the lumen of appendix? It is mostly fecalith. Fecalith is also known as appendiculolith. Now, what is this fecalith or appendiculolith? A fecalith, it is sometimes referred to as appendiculolith. It is composed of fecal material, calcium phosphates, and bacteria and epithelial debris. So, a fecalith is mostly responsible for obstruction in the appendix lumen, which is composed of insipid fecal material, calcium phosphates, bacteria, and epithelial debris. So what is the importance of this fecalith? If you find incidental finding of fecalith, if the patient underwent for an ultrasound, if the patient is having mild pain and incidental finding of fecalith in the investigations, it's a relative indication for prophylactic appendicectomy. So if the patient is having fecalith or appendiculolith, it's a relative indication for prophylactic appendicectomy. That indicates that this patient is prone for getting recurrent appendicitis. So this is a relative indication for prophylactic appendicectomy. And also, if you are planning for interval appendicectomy in a conservatively treated patient, and if the patient is having fecalith, then you will plan for interval appendicectomy. So the incidental finding of fecalith is a relative indication for prophylactic appendicectomy or an interval appendicectomy in a patient treated conservatively. This is the importance of fecalith. So one of the etiology is like decreased fiber intake and increased carbohydrate, that is refined carbohydrate consumption. The other one is infection or infective origin, that is both aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms. The next is obstructive part, that is mostly due to fecalith. What are the other causes for obstruction in the lumen of appendix? One is fibrotic stricture. Apart from the fecalith or appendiculolith, the other causes for obstruction of the lumen of appendix is fibrotic stricture. Yes, fibrotic stricture, that is previous appendicitis that resolved without surgical intervention. If the patient is having or suffering from recurrent right iliac fossa pain, it indicates that the patient has the previous episode of appendicitis, and it is clearly seen with the help, like you can say that with the help of fibrotic stricture. If the fibrotic stricture is present, it indicates that there is an patient might have suffered with the previous appendicitis episode. What are the other causes for the obstruction? One is fecalith, fibrotic stricture. The other one is tumor. Now tell me, what are the tumors that are common in case of appendix? I think you can answer via your chat box. What are the tumors that are common in appendix? Yes, carcinoid. Yes, carcinoid tumors are common in the appendix, like tip of the appendix. These are the tumors in the appendix. And the tumors of the cecum, that is adenocarcinoma of the cecum, also cause obstruction of the appendix at the base level. So this causes obstruction, and the other cause for obstruction is intestinal parasites, that is pinworms, Oxyuris vermicularis pinworm. All this causes obstruction to the lumen of appendix, like fecalith, strictures, tumors, and intestinal parasites. Now coming to the pathology of appendicitis. See, pathology, you say there will be clustering of cases among children and young adults. This indicates that it is of infective agent, sometimes possibly virus, which initiates the inflammatory response. So seasonal variations of the incidence is also observed. So in case of like some seasons, mostly in our practice in Gayatri, we see most of the appendicitis during our May and April, January, this month. I think because of there is the seasonal variation and infective agent like viral etiology that initiates the inflammatory response, there will be clustering of cases. Coming to the pathology, because of this infection or inflammation or the initiating agent, this causes lymphatic hyperplasia. You know that the different layers of appendix, microscopically, what are the different layers of appendix? One is mucosa, submucosa, muscularis layer, and the serosa. In the submucosa and muscularis, you will find the lymphoid follicles. If there is hyperplasia of this lymphatic hyperplasia, this causes luminal obstruction. In addition to this lymphatic hyperplasia, if there is like any fecalith, it causes luminal obstruction. With the luminal obstruction, there will be increased intraluminal pressure, and there will be accumulation of secretions like mucus secretions. There will be accumulation of secretions that causes edema and mucosal ulceration. Once the mucus get ulcerated, there will be bacterial translocation into the submucosa, and this initiates the appendicitis or inflammation. So coming to the pathology, that is hyperplasia of the lymphoid follicles, which causes the luminal obstruction. With that, there will be increased intraluminal pressure, edema, mucosal ulceration, and there will be translocation of the bacteria into the submucosa. At this stage, in many of the cases, there will be spontaneous resolution without any treatment, or with mild antibiotic course, there will be resolution of these symptoms, or it may progress into venous obstruction, causing ischemia of the appendix wall, invasion of the bacteria into the muscularis propria and submucosa. Then this leads to acute appendicitis. If the acute appendicitis is not treated, in some cases it may, with more distinction, it may land up into lump or mucocele. Sometimes it may also end into gangrenous appendicitis. If the gangrenous appendix, once the appendix is gangrenous, then there's a chances of perforation of appendix that leads to diffuse peritonitis. So coming to the pathology, it is lymphatic hyperplasia, luminal obstruction, increased intraluminal pressure, then ulceration, bacterial translocation. Most of the cases there will be resolution at this stage. If there is no resolution, then it may proceed into venous obstruction, that is vascular compromise will occur. Venous obstruction, then ischemia of the appendix wall, then there will be invasion of muscularis propria and submucosa. Then it may lead to acute appendicitis, gangrenous appendicitis, and if this gangrenous appendicitis gets perforated, then it leads to peritonitis. So mucocele of appendix, diffuse peritonitis, sometimes there will be mass formation, these are the complication of the acute appendicitis. Again, coming to the pathophysiology, it is obstruction, then the mucus builds, increased pressure, ulceration, vascular compromise, that is decreased blood flow, that promotes the bacterial invasion, inflammation and swelling of the appendix. Now, what are the factors that promote perforation? Is this perforation, that is appendicular perforation, you can see, will you see in every case of acute appendicitis or not? No, you will not see in every case of acute appendicitis. You will see in certain patients who have this following risk factors. The risk factors for perforation of appendix are extremes of age, that is infant age and also elderly people, immunosuppressed patients, diabetes mellitus, fecolic obstruction of appendix lumen. So this is fecolic, there will be more chances of perforation of the appendix, and also free lying pelvic appendix and previous abdominal surgery. So these are the factors that promote perforations, like extremes of age, immunosuppression, diabetes mellitus, fecolic obstruction, free lying pelvic appendix and previous abdominal surgery. So can anyone tell me what is the reason for these factors promoting perforation? Why you will see perforation in these patients? Like extremes age, infantile age, elderly, immunocompromised. Why if the pelvis, appendix is lying in the pelvis, there's a chances of more perforation. So in these cases, the omentum will be, it is not well developed. Like in case of infants and in case of immunocompromised people, the omentum is not that much developed to subside the inflammations. Generally, we all know that the omentum is the policeman of abdomen. So whenever there is infection or inflammation, the omentum will reach to that point. But in case of infant people or immunosuppressed people or population, you will not see that omentum serving its purpose, that is acting like the policeman. So in these cases, the omentum, it limits the ability of greater omentum to wall off the spread of peritoneal contamination. So this is the reason for perforation in these people. Now, what are the two clinical syndromes of acute appendicitis? One is acute catarrhal, that is non-obstructive appendicitis. The other one is acute obstructive appendicitis. This obstructive appendicitis, in case of obstructive appendicitis, you will find fecolic, tumor or stricture. This acute obstructive appendicitis, it is having more acute course, abrupt in nature, and it mostly mimics like acute intestinal obstruction. Now, this is about the pathophysiology and etiology of acute appendicitis. Now, how do you evaluate a case of acute appendicitis? Coming to the diagnosis, how do you diagnose a case of acute appendicitis? The diagnosis is mostly clinical. It is essentially the clinical diagnosis. However, if the diagnosis is clinically alone, then there is a chance of to 30% negative appendicectomy. That is, without having the features of acute appendicitis also, there's a chance to remove the appendix. It is about 15 to 30% if the diagnosis is only based on clinical diagnosis. So what are the other investigations which help for diagnosing the appendicitis? Is routine laboratory examinations or investigations. Next, clinical scoring systems. Next, imaging modalities like ultrasound and CT. Next, diagnostic laparoscopy. Now, coming to the clinical evaluation, what are the symptoms of acute appendicitis? Can anyone tell me, like, what is the nature of this pain of appendicitis? What is the characteristic pain of acute appendicitis? Okay. The characteristic feature of acute appendicitis pain, it is not colicky pain. See, colicky pain is for, or it's poorly localized. See, these are the just terms for all bowel pains. Any intestine pain or any hollow viscous pain, it will be like colicky pain, and it is like poorly localized. In case of acute appendicitis, it is migratory pain, that is shifting pain. You call it as shifting pain. Initially, the pain will start at the periumbilical region, around the umbilicus, where the pain will be poorly localized and it will be diffuse. Later, the pain will be shifted to the right iliac fossa. Okay, periumbilical colicky pain, which will be later shifted to the right iliac fossa. Why the pain will be shifted to the right iliac fossa? Can anyone tell me? Why the pain of acute appendicitis initially in the umbilicus and later it will be shifted to the right iliac fossa? This shifting of the pain, both in the nature and location, is the characteristic of acute appendicitis pain. See, the shift is from umbilicus to right iliac fossa, that is in the location. Initially, the pain will be in the umbilicus, later it will be shifted to the right iliac fossa, that is shifting in the location. Initially, the pain will be dull aching. Next, once it is shifted to the right iliac fossa, it will be severe pain. Why the shift is, initially this is due to the visceral pain shifted to the parietal pain. Okay, I will show in the next slide. Other features or other symptoms of acute appendicitis are anorexia and nausea. See, initially the pain in the appendix is due to distension of appendix. That is due to the filling of mucus, increased intraluminal pressure. All this causes initial pain of appendix, where the visceral peritoneum gets irritated. As the embryological origin of the appendix and umbilicus is same, so the visceral pain is referred, or it will be felt at the region of the umbilicus in case of acute appendicitis in the initial time. Once this pain is shifted to the, once the inflamed appendix, if it irritates the parietal peritoneum, then it causes somatic pain, where the pain will be more severe. That is in the right lower quadrant. So, in case of acute appendicitis, the pain initially will be in the umbilicus because of visceral peritoneum or viscera. Next, the pain will be in the right lower quadrant, that is right iliac fossa, due to irritation of parietal peritoneum, that is shifting from visceral to somatic pain. And what about this anorexia? Anorexia means loss of appetite, which is useful and constant clinical features, particularly in children. See, in the adults, you will see anorexia, but it is most common and most important in case of children. Coming to the pain, it is migratory pain. That is from umbilicus to the right iliac fossa. That is shift in nature, dull aching to severe intense pain, and also location from umbilicus to right iliac fossa. So, patient will give the classical history, like the patient will say that the pain initially started at the periumbilical region and with 1 or 2 episodes of vomiting along with nausea and anorexia and slight fever. The pain gradually it shifted to the right iliac fossa. This is the classical history of acute appendicitis pain. So this is about your clinical like history of present illness or chief complaint. Now past history. It is important to elicit past history because the patient often gives a history of similar discomfort that settle spontaneously. That is past history also. The patient will have the similar complaints. And it's important to take family history also, because 1/3 of the children with appendicitis have a first degree relative with a similar history. So both past history and family history are important in case of emergency conditions also, like acute appendicitis, where there will be the past history of similar episodes, and family history, family members suffered from the similar problem. Now, coming to the examination point, how do you examine? That is abdominal examination. One is thorough clinical examination. This clinical examination, you have to assess about hydration status of the patient. You have to see, and also anemic status of the patient. Okay. Next, you will find low grade pyrexia, and there will be localized abdominal tenderness, muscle guarding, and rebound tenderness. Now tell me, what are the headings under examination, clinical examination of abdomen? What are the 4 headings? Can anyone tell me? What are the examination headings, abdominal examinations? 4 headings. So the first one is inspection, right? By looking at the abdomen. What do you say by looking at the abdomen? One, you will find that limitation of respiratory movement in the lower abdomen. Because of the pain, there will be limited movement of the respiration. Limitation of respiratory movement in the lower abdomen. And the other important sign is pointing sign. You have to ask the patient where the pain began and where it moved. The patient will tell that initially the pain started at the umbilicus, next it shifted to the right iliac fossa. So in case of inspection of acute abdomen of acute appendicitis patient, there will be limitation of respiratory movement in the lower abdomen, and the patient, you have to ask for elicit for pointing sign. You have to ask the patient about to point where the pain starts and where it shifted. Now coming to the palpation. In palpation, see, there will be different signs, in n number of signs in acute appendicitis, but at your level, I will tell about the important signs like rousing sign. That is palpation of left iliac fossa may cause pain in right iliac fossa. Now tell me, what is the reason for this? Why palpating in the left iliac fossa causes pain in right iliac fossa in case of acute appendicitis? Generally, if you palpate or if you press in the right iliac fossa, there will be pain because of inflamed appendix. But in case of acute appendicitis, you will also find, or when you palpate left iliac fossa, there will be pain in the right iliac fossa. Shift of bowel loops. It's not exactly the shift of bowel loops. It is the transmission of the gas. Once you are pushing or if you are pressing the left iliac fossa, the gas or the air in the bowel loops will be shifting towards the cecum and the appendix, and it will cause pain in the right iliac fossa. Okay. And you will also elicit cutaneous hyperesthesia. That is, by touching also there will be more pain in the right iliac fossa. It's maybe demonstrable. The other sign is Soyas sign. What is Soyas sign? In case of if the appendix is in pelvic position, that is the tip is in the pelvic, then the tip may get lies over the Soyas muscle. So if you ask the patient to lie on left side and the left leg is bent at the hip, if it is flexed at the hip joint, then it will cause pain. That is Soyas sign. So Soyas sign indicates that inflamed appendix is lying over the Soyas muscle, that is mostly pelvic in position. So when you ask the patient to lie on the left side and the right thigh of the patient is flexed backwards, it will cause pain. That is Soyas sign. The other sign is obturator test or obturator sign. Here, if the inflamed appendix is in contact with obturator internus, then this will cause pain in the hypogastrium. How do you elicit this? If you flex at the hip joint and internally rotate the hip, it will cause pain in the hypogastrium. That is obturator sign. So, if obturator sign is positive in case of acute appendicitis, it indicates that inflamed appendix tip is in contact with obturator internus muscle. So when you are flexing the hip and internally rotating the hip, it will cause the pain in the hypogastrium region. So this is regarding the different signs in case of acute appendicitis examination. One important sign in the inspection is pointing sign. In case of palpation, it is rousing sign and Soya sign and obturator test or obturator sign. And there are different clinical scores. The most important and most widely used clinical score is Alvado score. It is also like Mantel scoring. That is Alvado score. If the score of 7 or more, it is strongly predictive of acute appendicitis. So Alvado score, it's most widely used score for acute appendicitis. If the score is more than 7 or of 7, it is strongly indicating the patient is suffering from acute appendicitis. So in patients with equivocal score, that is 5 to 6, then you have to take the help of imaging like abdominal ultrasound and CECT. If there are findings in ultrasound and CECT, then you have to plan for surgery. So this is the role for imaging modalities. So this is the Alvado score or Mantel score. See, Mantel is the first letters, that is migratory right iliac fossa pain, anorexia, nausea and vomiting, right iliac fossa tenderness, rebound tenderness, elevated temperature, leukocytosis, and shift to left. What is this shift to left? Leukocytosis, increase in leukocyte. If they are immature leukocytes, there is more leukoblasts, that is indicates shift to left. All these contents are given 1 point except 2 categories, like one is right iliac fossa tenderness and the other one is leukocytosis, which is given 2 points. Migratory right iliac fossa pain 1 point, anorexia 1, nausea and vomiting 1, right iliac fossa tenderness 2 points, rebound tenderness 1, elevated temperature 1, leukocytosis again 2, shift to left is 1. The total is 10. If clinically, if the total is 7 or more than 7, then it indicates that the patient is suffering from acute appendicitis. Now, this is about the clinical examination. One clinical examination, you have to take history, where the patient will give the classical history of migratory pain. Next is about examination of the patient, inspection, palpation. Next, clinical scoring, that is Alvado scoring. Next comes your laboratory examinations or investigations. In the investigations point, WBCs, that is leukocytosis, is elevated, but in 10% of cases it will be normal. If the TLC, leukocytes, what is the normal value of leukocytes? That is 4 to 10,000. If it is more than 20,000, it's suggestive of perforation. And in this, if the neutrophils constitutes more than 75%, there will be minimal pyuria, microscopic hematuria. These are common laboratory findings you will see in case of acute appendicitis, that is leukocytosis. And if it is a case of appendicular perforation, the leukocytes will increase up to 20,000. There will be microscopic hematuria and minimal pyuria and polymorph, that is neutrophils will be more than 75%. The other investigations, abdominal x-rays. See, the importance of abdominal x-ray is not for diagnosing appendicitis. It helps to rule out the other conditions like small bowel, that is like intestinal obstruction. In like up to 10 to 15%, it helps us to find appendicololiths. See, this is the appendicololith or fecolith. The other investigations are ultrasound. This is the most common investigation, most widely used investigation to diagnose the appendicitis. However, ultrasound is always operator based. That is, it depends upon the radiologist. The sensitivity is 85% and specificity it is more than 90%. What are the findings of acute appendicitis in case of ultrasound? The diameter, that is anteroposterior diameter, will be more than 7 mm and it will be thick walled, non-compressible and also peristaltic. There will be no peristalsis. So what are the features of appendix in case of appendicitis in ultrasound are the diameter will be more than 7 mm and it will be thick walled, it will be non-compressible and aperistaltic. If there are any mass or any fluid, you can also see in ultrasound. See, ultrasound, it is more useful in children and also in adults to rule out other gynec pathologies. Okay, see, this is the appendix, aperistaltic, thick walled, non-compressible and AP diameter more than 7 mm. Next imaging modality is CT. Here also the classical findings, you will see the diameter will be more than 7 mm. It will be halo or target sign and periappendiceal fat stranding indicating inflammation, edema, fluid, mass, abscess. All this are also you can see in case of CT. The most importantly, when you are having a doubt like alveolar score is equivocal and also you are suspecting other etiologies like any tumor, stricture, then you will order for CT. In general, you will go with ultrasound only. Modern CT it is both sensitive and specific. Approximately 95% of the cases, it will give the diagnosis of acute appendicitis. You will, what is the rational use? You will not use CT in all patients. You will advise CT in case of elderly patients to rule out other etiologies like other tumors or any other diverticulars, any other diagnosis, and atypical presentations, neoplasm, diverticulitis, intestinal obstruction. MRI, there's no as such role. Okay, so CT, it's not advised in all patients. It is advised whenever needed, like atypical presentations, elderly patients, neoplasms. When you are suspecting neoplasms or intestinal obstruction or diverticulitis, then you go for CT. Now, what is the role of diagnostic laparoscopy? As you know that laparoscopy, you can use both diagnostic purpose and therapeutic purpose. In case of acute appendicitis, therapeutically, you can go for laparoscopic appendicectomy. Diagnosis also, it will help to diagnose the condition whenever you are having doubt, especially in case of women of childbearing age. It will help to diagnose and to rule out other gynecological problems. Prompt intervention that helps for future fertility. Okay, women of childbearing age, diagnostic laparoscopy will be useful to rule out other gynecological problems. And now, there are special scenarios according to the age and according to the position of the appendix. What are the special scenarios? Like as per age, if it is in the infants, it is uncommon, as I already discussed before, and it is difficult to diagnose because they will not able to communicate. In such cases, there will be chances of perforation and there will be diffuse peritonitis. The other thing is in case of children, there will be marked anorexia. Elderly people, there will be gangrene and perforation and features of subacute intestinal obstruction. If the patient is obese, then there will be diminished signs and delayed diagnosis. If it is in pregnancy, acute appendicitis, it's the most common extrauterine cause of acute abdomen in case of pregnancy, delayed presentation. There will be fetal loss up to 3 to 5%. If there is appendicular perforation, then the fetal loss will be up to 20%. That is according to the age. According to the position, if the position of tip of appendix is retrocecal, then it presents mostly as silent appendix. Why does a retrocecal appendix, the most common position of appendicitis will present as a silent appendix? Because the cecum will be full of gas. So when you press over the right iliac fossa, there will be cecum which is fully distended with the gas over the appendix. So the patient will not feel any pain. So retrocecal appendix, mostly it is a silent appendix. There will be psoas sign and also loin tenderness. The other scenarios, if it is the tip is in the pelvis, this tip will irritate the rectum and this causes early diarrhea. If the tip irritates bladder, then it causes urinary frequency, increased urinary frequency. There will be tenderness over the symphysis pubis And on digital rectal examination, the pouch of Douglas or rectovesical pouch, there will be tenderness, obturator and Soya sign will be positive. So in case of appendicitis patient, if the patient is complaining of diarrhea or increased urinary frequency, indicates that the position of appendix can be in the pelvis, which is irritating the rectum and the bladder. If it is post-ileal, then it will cause diarrhea and marked retching and ill-defined tenderness to the right of umbilicus. Now, coming to the differential diagnosis, there will be n number of differential diagnoses for acute appendicitis. In children, it will be different. In case of young adults, it will be different. In elderly women, there will be different differential diagnoses. Coming to the children, the important differential diagnoses are gastroenteritis, where there will be marked vomiting and diarrhea. Mesenteric adenitis, patient will give previous history of viral infection. Meckel's diverticulitis, intussusception, HS purpura, that is Henoch-Schönlein purpura with rashes, lobar pneumonia, cough. So these are differential diagnoses in case of children. In adults, it is ureteric colic, regional enteritis, that is ileitis, perforated peptic ulcer, torsion of testis, pancreatitis. Mostly will confuse with pancreatitis and acute appendicitis, and right ureteric colic and rectus sheath hematoma. These are the differential diagnoses, like right ureter colic, enteritis, that is terminal ileitis, perforated peptic ulcer, torsion of testis, pancreatitis, rectus sheath hematoma. In case of female, this is important, adult female, that is Mitchell-Marsh and pelvic inflammatory disease, pyelonephritis, ectopic pregnancy, right ectopic pregnancy and right, acute appendicitis, it is like difficult to diagnosis. It is one of the important differential diagnosis. The other one is like torsion, rupture of ovarian cyst, and endometriosis. So in adult female, mostly the pelvic etiologies or gynecological problems like Mitchell-Marsh and PID, that is pelvic inflammatory disease, pyelonephritis, ectopic pregnancy, torsion and rupture of ovarian cyst, endometriosis. Elderly people, the differential diagnoses are different, like diverticulitis, intestinal obstruction. Here in elderly people, tumors will come, that like carcinoma colon, torsion of appendix epiploicae. Sometimes leaking aortic aneurysm also mimics like acute appendicitis. So this is about the differential diagnosis of acute appendicitis. Now coming to the treatment of acute appendicitis. What is the treatment for acute appendicitis? In surgery, always there's like surgical treatment and also medical or conservative management. So what is the conservative management, or in which people you will offer conservative management? Generally, the treatment of acute appendicitis is surgery. Surgery is the gold standard treatment for acute appendicitis, that is laparoscopic appendicitis is the gold standard treatment. But in some special situations or in some situations, you will offer non-operative management, that is conservative management, medical management in cases in patients with uncomplicated, that is absence of appendicular perforation or abscess appendicitis, and also the patient having contraindications for anesthesia purpose. In such cases, you will go for non-operative management. What is this non-operative management? That is bowel rest, NPO, nil per mouth, and intravenous antibiotics. Here you will give metronidazole for anaerobic coverage and third generation cephalosporin. So the non-operative management, bowel rest, IV fluids, IV antibiotics, which includes metronidazole and third generation cephalosporin. Recently, ertapenem, that is imipenem compositions, is also showing an good results. Coming to the surgical point of view, there are two, one is laparoscopic approach, the other one is open approach. At present, laparoscopic approach is the gold standard one. As you all know, there are many advantages with laparoscopy. In case of all laparoscopic procedures, you will give general anesthesia and the position is supine. What are the advantages? One is diagnosis. You can establish the diagnosis. You will be making sure that this is the diagnosis, and this will reduce the negative appendicectomy rates. And there will be quicker recovery and rate of wound infection will be lower compared to the open surgery. See, this is the laparoscopic incisions. Cosmetically also it will be better and less post-operative pain and quick recovery. This is the open incision. So in case of these are the laparoscopic instruments, you will ligate at the base of the appendix. Once mesoappendix is quadrized, then you will ligate at the base. In our institute, we are using the endo loops. See, this one is the endo loops. I think many of you had seen me performing surgeries in the theater. This is the endo loop and this is the laparoscopic instrument. This is the mesoappendix. You will ligate with the help of endo loop at the base. That is about laparoscopic appendicectomy. Laparoscopic appendicectomy is the gold standard. It is performed under general anesthesia in supine position. Here we use endo loops for ligating the base of the appendix. Now coming to the open appendicectomy. See, open appendicectomy, there are different incisions, that is cutting, different type of incisions. Can anyone tell me some of the incisions for open appendicectomy? Incisions for open appendicectomy. In case of laparoscopic appendicectomy, you will keep the ports like 5 mm port, 10 mm trocars, like you will keep. But in case of open surgery, yes, that is McBurney's incision, Lance incision, gridiron incision. See, McBurney's incision and gridiron's incision is one and the same. Okay, good. McBurney's, Lance, you will discuss some more incisions also. One is McBurney's incision, also known as gridiron's incision. Why it is known as gridiron's incision? What is this gridiron? Gridiron is that it's a framework in the olden days they used for the ship. Okay, framework, cross beam frameworks. That is for, it is like iron frameworks for ships. So McBurney's incision or gridiron incision, Lance incision, midline incision, Rocky Davis incision, Rutherford Morrison's extension, Flower-Weave's extension. See, nothing to worry about this incision. Just remember only McBurney's incision, and you can get all the remaining incision. One, you know what is meant by McBurney's incision. It is a right angle to the line joining anterior superior iliac spine and umbilicus at 2/3 distance from the umbilicus and 1/3 above and 2/3 below. See, I will show you. See, this is the umbilicus and here there will be anterior superior iliac spine, right anterior superior iliac spine. So the line joining spino-umbilical line. This is spino-umbilical line. So anterior superior iliac spine to umbilicus, that is spino-umbilical line. If you take exactly the point at the medial 2/3, this is the medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3, and if you draw a line perpendicular to this point, the point at the medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3 and perpendicular to this point, that is McBurney's incision or gridiron's incision. Are you able to appreciate this blue one? That is the McBurney's incision. Okay, that is about McBurney's. That is medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3 to spino-umbilical line drawn perpendicular. If this exactly at that point, if it is a transverse incision, then that is the Lance incision. If it is a transverse one, then it is a Lance incision. The point joining lateral 1/3 and medial 2/3. If it is perpendicular, then it is McBurney's. If it is transverse, then it is Lance incision. If it is exactly transverse, that is horizontal, then it is Rocky Davis incision. Rocky Davis incision. And if this Rocky Davis incision, if it is medial extension, that is Flower-Weave's extension. And if it is lateral extension, then it is Rutherford Morrison extension. This Rutherford Morrison extension and Flower-Weave's extension are muscle cutting incisions. Whereas this McBurney's, Lance are muscle splitting incision. You know, difference between muscle cutting and muscle splitting. If you cut the muscle, that is muscle cutting. If you split the muscle, that is you are not cutting the fibers, you are just splitting the muscle fibers, that is muscle splitting incision. Muscle splitting incisions examples are McBurney's and Lance. This Rocky Davis, Flower Berry's extension, Rutherford Morrison extension, these are muscle cutting. So total you have to remember 6 incisions. One is McBurney's incision, Lance incision, Rocky Davis incision, Flower Berry's extension, that is medial extension. If it is lateral extension, that is Rutherford Morrison extension. The other one is midline or paramedian incision. When you are suspecting there's a suspicion of small intestinal obstruction, then you will go for midline or paramedian incision. So McBurney's incision, Lance incision, it is a transverse skin incision, and also midline incision in case of bowel obstruction, if there is suspicion of bowel obstruction. And Rocky Davis is transverse exactly at the level of spino-umbilical line, and Rutherford Morrison is lateral extension, Flower Berry's extension is medial extension. Last 3 are muscle cutting, and McBurney's and Lance are muscle splitting. Okay, now what are the layers of the abdomen? That is abdominal wall incision. First you will cut the skin, fat, superficial fascia, fat. Then comes external oblique aponeurosis, internal oblique aponeurosis, then transverse abdominis muscle. All this you will split. These muscles you will split. Then you will find the parietal peritoneum and visceral peritoneum. Then you will identify the appendix. So after giving the incisions, any incisions, like mostly you will give nowadays like Lance. Of course, nowadays most of us are doing laparoscopic appendicectomy only. If you go for open appendicectomy, the most widely used incisions are Lance and McBurney's incision. After giving the incision, we will open skin, superficial fascia, external oblique aponeurosis, internal oblique aponeurosis or muscle, transverse abdominis muscle. You will split all these muscles. This is muscle splitting. Next, parietal peritoneum, visceral peritoneum, you will find the appendix. So this is the appendix, right? Now tell me, what is this instrument in open surgery? Here this is the appendix, and we are using one instrument to hold the appendix. Can anyone tell me what is this instrument? Okay, this is the Babcock. So Babcock instrument is used to hold the tubular structures like ileum, appendix, fallopian tube. So this is the Babcock instrument which we will use in open appendicectomy. These are the artery forceps, and this is the mesoappendix. First you have to clamp the mesoappendix, and you have to ligate the appendicular artery, and then you have to ligate at the base of the appendix. So after giving the incision, like any incision, McBurney's or Lance, splitting the muscle fibers, entering the peritoneum, identifying the appendix at the base of the cecum, you have to follow the tinea and identify the base of the appendix. Then you have to ligate the mesoappendix. Then you have to ligate at the base of the appendix. See, this is the appendix. This is the Babcock instrument. I think now you will be able to identify. And here you will be crushing, and once you will cut. Okay. This is about the traditional open appendicectomy, where you are ligating at the base. And there is also a term like retrograde appendicectomy. In case of retrograde appendicectomy, it's the dissection is from the base to the tip. In case of normal appendicectomy, the dissection will start from the tip to the base. In case of retrograde, you will start from base to the tip. It is in retrograde direction, from base to the tip. Now, sometimes you will find these problems intraoperatively. Okay, you had planned for surgery, and during the surgery you find it as a normal appendix. The thing you have to do is you have to exclude other differential diagnosis for appendicitis. That is, you have to look for Meckel's diverticulitis, terminal ileitis, and tubo-ovarian causes. You have to find whether these are present or not. Even these are absent and it is normal appendix. In case of open approach, then you will perform appendicectomy. In case of laparoscopy, you will not perform appendicectomy. Okay. Sometimes you will not find appendix, then you have to mobilize the cecum. You have to mobilize entire cecum. Sometimes you will find the tumors at the appendix. If it is the tumor is less than 2 centimeters, then you will go for appendicectomy. If it is more than 2 centimeters, then you have to plan for right hemicolectomy. Sometimes you will see appendicular abscess, appendicular mass. If it is an appendicular abscess, then drainage with antibiotic. If it is appendicular mass or lump, then you have to go for Oscar-Scherin regime. That is conservative management of appendicular lump is by Oscar-Scherin regime. Okay. If the Oscar-Scherin regime is that you have to monitor the pulse rate and the size of the mass. If the rate is rising pulse rate and increasing size of the mass, then you have to go for surgery. Now coming to the post-operative complications of appendicitis. The post-operative complications of appendicectomy is relatively uncommon, but if there are post-operative complications, then it will reflect the degree of peritonitis that is present at the time of operation. Some of the complications are wound infection. This is the most common complication. It is 15 to 20%. That is wound infection. The other complications are intra-abdominal abscess, ileus, portal pyemia, fecal fistula, adhesive intestinal obstruction. So these are the post-operative complications of appendicitis, laparoscopic or open appendicectomy. That is wound infection, intra-abdominal abscess, ileus, portal pyemia, fecal fistula, adhesive intestinal obstruction. So coming to the treatment point of acute appendicitis, first thing is like after coming to the diagnosis of acute appendicitis, you will plan for surgery. That is laparoscopic appendicectomy and open appendicectomy. In case of laparoscopic appendicectomy, it is using the minimal access procedure, whereas open using the different incisions. Okay, this ends today's class. Any doubts? Any doubts? See, ma'am, what could be the minimum Alvarado score? See, if there is no complaints, then it will be 0 only. What is portal pyemia? For that, you have to know about the portosystemic anastomosis. What is the portosystemic anastomosis? You know there will be portal vein and systemic veins drainage. In case of infection, there is a site of anastomosis at the appendix also, like portal vein, systemic anastomosis. So infection of the portal vein, this drainage, it will cause infection in the portal vein. That is portal pyemia. Nice. Infective foci in the portal vein. Any other doubts? Okay, then we'll end up today's class here.